Okay, here we go. Welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations, where we share real talk, practical help, and hope-filled encouragement for your homeschooling journey. I'm Dawn Jackson, one of your co-hosts and coaches here at Empowering Homeschool. And today's episode is going to spark your imagination, maybe even reignite a little of that creativity in your home and in your heart. We're talking about storytelling, writing, and building confident, creative kids. And joining me is Mr. Chad Stewart, with a great award-winning author, creativity educator, and founder of the Devonfield Institute. Chad's been inspiring students and families across the country with his Devonfield series and school tours, helping kids tap into the kind of thinking that can't be replaced by AI or automation. If you've got a child who loves to write, or maybe one who doesn't even know they can, yet you think they might, this episode is for you. We'll dive into how to bring storytelling alive in your homeschool, why creativity is essential for the future, and how to help your child find their unique voice. But don't forget, check out spedhomeschool.com, where you can find awesome episodes like this one, and that can help you with helpful tools for your journey. So, Chad, thank you so much for being with me today.
You're welcome.
This is such a gift, and I feel really honored to be. As soon as they said, who wants to interview Chad, I was like, me. This creativity and all that is right up my alley, and I was so excited. But you've spent thousands of hours with students, all kinds of students all over the world. And I would love you just to start off, in case someone doesn't know you. I was new to your stories and fully engaged now, and would love it if you could just share your journey a little bit about who you are. You know the drill, and anything that would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just kind of kick it off. Originally from Newport Beach, California. We were talking about California earlier. I was back east in Wellesley, Massachusetts, where I did my undergraduate in British literature, European history, and then went on to postgraduate and graduate school. And I was actually in New England for 16 years. And through that time, also traveled over 50 countries. And was based in England off and on for 2 years, and then kind of did the grand tour and had a great time. And was actually eventually got into investment banking. And it wasn't really a good fit for me per se, but I really wanted to try that whole corporate world, and ended up working for 3 Fortune 100 companies. And it was at a seminar that I had to go to years ago. This is like over 12 years ago. And I think it was insurance. And I was sitting up in the front aisle, desperately trying to pay attention and be the good student and take notes. And I started to drift, and I started to doodle. And I doodled a simple circle, 3 lines, a basket, a boy and a girl. And I wrote The Boy and the Balloon. And that was kind of the working title at the time. And for some reason, that doodle really resonated with me. And part of it was based on my experience in living in England. And I was a British literature major, European history major. So loved the Brits, loved all those stories, starting with Dickens and Roald Dahl, James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Jane Austen, the Brontes, Lewis, to say the least, even Ian Fleming, the James Bond series. And so heavily influenced. And so went home that night from the weekend, and literally on one page of paper just outlined the scenario of the story. And it starts up in Yorkshire, Northern England, present day. And that's really important. So it's not futuristic. It's not 100 years ago. It's now. And I think that's really, really important. Starts up in Yorkshire at this horrible orphanage called Weatherly Orphanage. And it's about Tom. He's a 12-year-old orphan. He's been an orphan his whole life. He's been at Weatherly for 6 years. And this is the year he's going to escape, but he's not going anywhere without his best friend, Sarah, who's also 12. And somewhere along the lines, when they escape, the Commodore hot air balloons start flying all through England, and they're trying to get to London, the greatest city in the world. And they end up crash landing in Oxford, where they meet Professor Hainsworth, and then they go to Windsor Castle, London, and then finally down to Canterbury Cathedral. And so I sat down. Took me 4 years, 2,500 hours to write book 1, 384 pages. And as a side note, and we can come back to this, and it became something I did with all the books in the series, is by the third draft, finished draft, manuscript form, much like this, manuscript form, I reached out to middle schools, private and public, and was wondering if the teachers were interested in allowing that, any of their students to read this and give me feedback. And it was structured very well. They had 3 weeks to read it. We had a 2.5-page survey, never given out before, given out after they read it. And then once all that was done, and so at one public school, I had about 30 manuscripts, and we had almost 200 volunteers.
Wow.
That's how hungry kids were for something fun and exciting, extracurricular activity. And so once they were done in that 3 weeks, I gathered the surveys, and then I come into the library all day, and I'd be there between classes, 50 minutes, and 4 or 5 students would come in. We'd sit around a round table, and here's 11, 12, 13-year-olds, and here's the older adult author, and I was now the pupil. I was no longer the teacher. And there was always that kind of awkward moment for a few minutes, and then I start breaking the ice. And once they saw the sincerity of it, and it's like, what'd you think of the book? And it's like, oh, I loved it, and it's the best thing I've ever read. And I'm like, what didn't you like? What was missing? Was there anything confusing? If you were to change anything, what would it be? And we just get into this interaction, and then they're watching me listen to them and take notes. And suddenly a 12-year-old's voice matters to an adult, and their opinion has worth and value. And literally that became a model. In fact, I rewrote the beginning of book 1 based on the feedback. I was doing it one way, and I kept getting this consistency of feedback. And I'm like, okay, you're my audience. Now, why wouldn't I just take this out to professional paid to play critics that are giving 5 stars to garbage and are criticizing everyone else, and they're not even reading the stuff? They're not my audience. That's my audience.
I love that. That's ingenious. I am dying to ask you this question. I can't wait.
Let me finish real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
And so from the concept and finishing the book to launching it took over 10 years. 10 years of building the team, marketing plan, business plan. We were in this for a long haul, global phenomenon, and raising capital. I mean, literally millions of dollars to launch this thing properly. And when we launched officially in August 2019, I drove 9,000 miles. I visited 23 states, presented at over 200 schools in front of more than 40 to 50,000 students, and everything from a small Christian school, schoolroom up in a blizzard in Missoula, Montana, to one of the top private academies in Los Angeles, where all the actors send their kids to 430 students, 4th through 8th. And it was amazing. The tour is amazing. Since then, it's become one of the most awarded books in children's fiction. It's in the top 3% of all books ever sold within the same time frame. And we're on trajectory right now to outsell Harry Potter in the next 10 years, which I believe we will do. It's a 7-book series that'll be followed by 7 major motion pictures. We're in pre-production of the first live-action Britfield movie. Here's a finished movie script. This is the 7th draft. We've been working 18 months on that.
Can I be in it? I'll be a teacher.
Background, you could be talking to students or something. And then so it's great. I think what's great about the book and the series is, number one, takes place in current time. It's based on family, friendship, loyalty, courage, hope, and faith. And if you're asking what's the number one theme through the entire series, it's family and the importance of family, and not always measured by birth and blood, but by friendships that are forged, that are even stronger than even some of your relatives. As children are reading, as adults are reading it, they're learning about geography, art, architecture, history, and culture. We hit the 4 C's: creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. And the youngest reader is 7, the oldest reader is 93, and 55% of our global audience are adults. And book 2 we launched in 2021, takes place in France. It's called Britfield and Rise of the Lion. My main characters are Tom and Sarah, now 13 years old. And that's 474 pages. We launched book 3, Britfield and Return of the Prince, which takes place in Italy. The main characters are 14 now, and that's 575 pages. And then we just launched in January, Britfield and the Eastern Empire. Characters are now 15, and that was 437 pages. But with that said, the characters are very, very diverse. We have Oliver, who's an Oxford University student, who's a sophomore, so he's 20, and then he's 21, and then 22. We have Kate, who's this kind of computer geek, their hair kind of pulled back with glasses. Although we changed her appearance in book 3, and Oliver falls for her real fast.
Yeah,
they have to go. Him and his uncle Henry have to go drive up to Glasgow and sort of rescue her because she's in a bind. And he's like, "Oh, we got to go get that computer geek." And then they walk into this cafe, and he's like, "Whoa!" He's like, "Okay." And so it's really cool. And then we have Inspector Fontaine, who we introduced in book 2, who works for Interpol. And she's kind of young 30s, gorgeous and smart. articulate. We have Detective Gowerstone, early 40s. And so we have a really great diverse cast of characters. So it's not kind of a kid's books. It's not like a Matilda, although it starts in an orphanage. I always love to say it's not about an orphanage, it's about getting out of the orphanage.
Yeah.
There's a great quote about Lincoln. He said, Lincoln wasn't great because he was born in a cabin. It's because he got out of the cabin.
I've never heard that. I love that.
And then book 5, which I've started, will take place in Asia, starting in Siberia and go through China, South Korea, Japan, all the way down to Australia. And then book 6 will be in South America, and then book 7 will be United States. And by then, the main characters are 18. And so kind of want to just give an overview of this global book series, current time, real issues, and we'll stop there.
I have a million questions about the stories, but I know we're doing a podcast about something else. But boy, I have a ton of questions about these guys. My question for you, and I'm glad you made me wait, thank you, is your life intertwined in the stories of these children in these books? I mean, other than your travels. Sure. Okay. I'm just always curious. No one's asked you that yet. So
and it's interesting because it's like, thousands of questions, and every now and then I'm like, hey, I've never been asked that, I was funny. When I was doing the presentations at the schools, I remember a little fourth grader goes, what's your favorite type of food? It's like, it's so cute, and I'm like, steak. But
yes.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting too, because we're going to talk about storytelling and the impact. And you had given me some questions. I was thinking about it today, and it's like, as parents may well know, how impressionable children are, especially at a young age. And it was, because of the life that I had growing up, I had a great elementary school. Really, it was actually across the street. I had a wonderful 6th grade teacher who was very creative, and she brought creativity into her classroom. And I'll circle back to that in a second. But it was the books that I read. I'll never forget The Mouse and the Motorcycle and Runaway Ralph.
Love that.
Yeah, and Beverly Clearly. And that was based on a true story, actually. We could circle back to that. But that impression, in 1977, when I was 8 years old, I saw Star Wars. That changed my life, and I thought 13 times. And I'm not a sci-fi person. I'm not Star Trek, but Star Wars was a monumental film, a monumental moment. We're almost 50 years later. It still continues. It's a $74 billion franchise on a movie script that was rejected from Hollywood. We could talk about that. But that, at 8 years old, impacted me and stuck with me. And so it's a lot of, and then I love James Bond movies. Spy Who Loved Me with Roger Moore. That stuck with me. Moonraker, some of those earlier ones.
How many times did you see that one?
Not that many. Yeah. I mean, Star Wars is my record. I never topped that sense, but I mean, I was just captivated. Yeah. And I use it when I'm teaching, and we can even talk about it today in storytelling, because I'll do like a mini writing workshop as I'm presenting to 300 or 400. And I'm like 7 steps to writing a compelling story. And so I'll use that, and then I'll also say, and then I'll play a really fun 1-minute clip of the Star Wars, and then I'll say, whether you like Star Wars or not, what can we learn from something that's successful, right? You look at successful movies, you look at successful books. What is it? You know what I mean? And it has nothing to do with sci-fi. And just as a reference point, like with Star Wars, number 1, it's an original story. We like that. It's based on the 3-act structure. That's very important. It's the hero's journey, which is also very important. It's a very specific formula to follow. It's engaging in a great adventure. Who doesn't love a great adventure? Takes us to a place we've never been before. We love that. In this case, it's outer space. Your book you write could be taking me to Australia or New Zealand, or Hawaii, or out on this boat trip. We like that. We like that journey. It's got a great cast of characters, right? Yeah. It has humor, even as intense as it was. I was doing an interview earlier today, and we were talking about great comedies and how that art form is almost gone in film. But I was coming back to, like, even Star Wars. It's a very intense. I mean, it starts. It's like the very beginning of it is this little ship being attacked. You know what I mean? It doesn't get any more intense, and yet it has this, especially through the robot C-3PO, with this funny comic lines. It's funny. It takes, So, and it's a typical good versus evil. That's the main theme, and David and Goliath story. And we love that. We love the ragtag rebellion against the mighty empire. And think about it. How is this ragtag empire going to defeat this empire that actually has a planet that can destroy other planets? I mean, so I use all that to say all those elements can be brought into the story you're writing.
Yeah. And that's the story God's writing in the world too.
Sure.
But I do want to say something about humor. Humor is really important to me. And in the first book that I'm listening to, ran out of Spotify data, but I'm going to get it back. I could not believe how many times I laughed through that. I just enjoyed that so much. I mean, when you wake up in the middle of the night and you put it on because you're like, I just got to find out what's going on right now, or I fall asleep to it. It's just, it's so good. It's so rich, but I know we'll probably get to that at some point. Can you help parents understand a way in which they can encourage oral storytelling, maybe in the beginning with their children, the non-writers, as a pre-writing activity, even, right?
And I'll say this too. I'll say three things. One is a child will never know what they're capable of doing until you give them an opportunity to do it. Mm-hmm. And your goal as a parent is to give them as many opportunities as possible. And I'm not talking about sending them off to a 6-week, $5,000 program in London. If you can, hats off. But everything I talk, I'm always very conscious of money, and most of it you don't need it. Number one is spending time with them and as much time as possible. But doing fun things, bringing fun into their life, doing library, and making it fun. Like you should be taken to the museum once a month, and you don't go to the museum for 6 hours. That would bore me. But you go into 1 or 2 rooms and you look at the paintings and examine them, and then maybe say, hey, look at each one, and then tell me what's your favorite and what you like about it, and then I'll tell you which one I really like, and and you make art fun, you make the collaboration, you make their opinion, and then afterwards go out and get a hot fudge sundae or something. You know what I mean? It's just like, because I get that every kid, but what you're doing is they're learning to go to a museum, they're learning to look at art. I'm using that as one example. You can walk downtown if you're like in Boston or San Francisco, and you spend an hour and you go down maybe 2 or 3 blocks, do a little bit of research on some of the great architecture there, or a couple key buildings, or go into a cathedral and spend 30 minutes just walking around and looking at it, and do a little research, maybe read something about it, and this was founded and so and so, and and you just bring in a little bit of facts. You don't drown it out with details and stuff, but you start to create this world in their mind. I mean, from 5, 6, 7 years old. That they will never forget. And who knows? I mean, maybe when they grow up, they're going to be an architect, or they become a painter. There's a great book out there. You might be able to find it in print, and it's called Coloring Outside the Lines. And it's by Professor Roger Schenck. And he used to be a professor of the graduate program at Northwestern. And I just love the title. It says everything, Coloring Outside the Lines, right? And I think he said something like at the very beginning, he was horrified by what schools are doing to children. They're taking the love of learning out of them. And putting a lot of dry, unimportant facts into their mind. But he gives an example because this child was quite intelligent, smart, homeschooled kid. And I think when they were 15 or 16, and they'd gone to Paris, and the kid just was so fascinated with subways because it was kind of the first time he really was introduced to that multiple system. And so his father said, here's $20, $40. Go have a blast. And the kid had so much fun, just looking at this line and getting on the subway and shooting up this way, and then coming up and seeing where that went. And he said, years later, he's now a city planner.
Wow.
Works for like some state, some city as a city planner. And I like to use that example because it's like, 16 years old, you never know what would impress him, and that impressed him. The way that everything fit together and the system and all that kind of stuff. And I love that. And I'll come back to
that too. I say that to, when I'm coaching with a parent, even if their child is, diagnosed with autism and they don't talk, or, they don't know what they're learning because they can't express back. I say, expose them to everything. And I don't mean TV and YouTube, although it's not horrible. If you're doing a lesson on sea creatures and then you want to look up some sea animals or sea anemones, that's fine. But expose them to everything. I was just sharing recently with a parent your books and having them play them in the background, just the story, just the accents, the language, the voices. I don't even know. Is that one person doing all of that, by the way?
It is. His name's,
my gosh.
His name's Ian Russell. He's an award-winning British voice talent, and he did all the voices. And it was funny, too, when we were auditioning, and they would send it. They'd read like the first chapter or something, and we'd hear it. And I'll never forget this one woman. It sounded like she worked for the BBC. You know, it's like so dry and stale.
Yeah.
And then I heard Ian. I'm like, there we go. That's
Oh,
our
I
that's our
can't
winner.
believe how he can do them
Isn't that
so
amazing?
consistently. I love voices. I do puppetry with families.
Oh, very cool.
Even when I'm coaching a kid online, maybe I'll be talking to the puppet because I'm not
fun.
connecting with the child. So I use the puppet
Sure.
and it always works. It's
Right.
interesting. But it's the same thing with those voices. So I'm fascinated by that. Like, how can this person jump around so perfectly? Really?
Yeah, I think background music is great. Classical is phenomenal, and
Yeah.
and be specific about it. I mean, I'm a Beethoven fan because I like the powerful
Mozart.
symphonies and stuff. Yeah, okay, and Mozart's great too. You know, and
Yeah.
all of it. And again, just try different stuff. It'd be very interesting. Like maybe this week you're going to play this type of classical music and just watch and see if there's any impression on it.
I did.
But it does
I
sink.
said that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it does sink in. It does affect, and then and they'll never forget it. There's children at that age are like a sponge, and so much stuff goes in there. I remember at 8 years old being taken up to the Edwards Cinema, which is still there in Newport Beach, California, up in Vashon Island. It's gorgeous, like beautiful. And and we were being taken up to go see The Sound of Music. And I'll be honest, at 8 years old, I didn't, whatever.
Yeah.
And loved it. And it's to this day one of my top 5 movies of all time. I've watched it endless times. I've visited Salzburg, Austria twice. I've been to where it was filmed. I've been to the front of the house, you know, where she walks up that long boulevard, and then that mustard colored wall and the gate.
Oh my gosh.
It's still there. It looks exactly the same.
That is so cool.
And then the back of the house. And I'm using that and I've read 4 books on the Sound of Music and the making of the Sound of Music because it's a brilliant film. And you want to, yeah. And it's like, take the music out of it. I'm not necessarily a musical fan, right?
Yeah.
Some are not. I don't look at the Sound of Music like that. I look at it as a great story. A woman that's never going to be a nun, that's forced to go work for a captain who's lost his wife, that treats his children like he's on a ship. You know what I mean? I mean, the conflict is brilliant. The setup is beautiful. The kids are amazing. The scenery is breathtaking. All shot on location. You can visit it today, and
I didn't know that. That's amazing. I want to tell you something. Whenever I hear you talking, and when I heard you with Peggy Polar, you know, who's our SPED homeschool person, leading the way of the journey of SPED homeschooling. When she interviewed you and you talked about creativity, all I could think about was your mother, or was it your father, or was it both? Mm-hmm. Like, who created this enriching this? Because I tried to do that with my children when I homeschool. My kids are all grown, but you know, when I was that same way with art, and we did murals on the wall in the dining room. You know, it was constant. Well, I'm an artist, so art was really important to me. But who inspired you as a child like that? I mean, I can tell you're naturally high in imagination. I understand that. I see that. But and I'm thinking of our moms right now who say to me, I'm not an artist. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, you don't have to know. Just try. Just get stuff out.
And learn along the way and have fun with your kids learning. And a couple things about it is that we're all born creative. And so whether you think you're creative or not, you are. Most of us have been diverted away from creativity. I've got stats and statistics, if you want, that I can read about creativity. In fact, I'll say it real quick because it sets the pace, but a researcher by the name of George Land was hired by the government and to create a creativity test. They had like analytical tests. They had all these other tests. They needed something to test people's creativity, adults in certain fields, refined fields. And so it was a very successful test. And he decided to take this test out to the schools. And so over a certain period of time, he tested over thousands of 5-year-olds. And at that time, the 5-year-olds across the board were testing off the charts. 98 out of 100 5-year-olds were testing as geniuses. He tested that same group of kids at 10, and the score went from 95 to 30%. And then he tested them at 15, and it went down to 12%. And so in that gap of 10 years, it went from 95 to 12%. And what he learned was that schools were teaching creativity out of kids and out of children. And then he went on with the test and tested sort of an average of 30 something adults. And it was at, I think, 2% creativity.
I believe it.
But the thing is that he said in the test, this is really important, is that you can come back all the way to 95% of creativity. You don't lose it. It's like anything else. If I'm running marathons and I stop for 6 months, good luck. Interesting thing about the ballet too. I was on the board of directors for the San Diego Ballet because I love the arts, and I love the ballet because it's poetry in motion, right? It's a whole story without words. But that's a great field to use an example. I mean, like if you miss a week, I mean, it's tough. It's not like, oh, I was ill for like 3 weeks and I'm going to get right back into it. It's like, it costs you everything. And creativity is the same way. But the point is it's a muscle, and you can get back. You'll be 40, 50 years old and you can get back into a creativity. Maybe as a child, you love drawing. Well, what's keeping you from drawing? You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, and I get that you have to work and stuff. Would it kill you to spend a couple hours, maybe Saturday mornings as your drawing time, or you want to write that novel? Start writing. They say the longest part of the journey is getting out the front door, and that is
so true. Just making those first steps, making it a part of your morning practice. I've been doing that in I do draw, and I've been drawing just something in my living room, or yesterday I was on the floor next to a fire, just drawing a table with flowers on it. And, and it's not like for anything. I may make a painting out of it. I don't know, but it's that mindset of just, I don't know. It just changes something in the chemistry inside your body.
Yeah. When you're in a creative zone, it does a plethora of things. And I literally have a 120 slide pitch deck just on creativity. The research of creativity, the different aspects, what it does in the brain. But when you're doing something creative, again, number one, the first myth to debunk is that we use 10% of our brain. We use 100% of our brain. We use our entire brain. There's not some big empty gap up there of 90%. But when you do something creative, I mean, it's definitely more right side, but it flows across both spectrums. Your synapses is firing like crazy. It calms you down.
Yes.
It lowers depression. And it's the type of thing when you're in a zone, right? And you start out at 7 o'clock and you're like, what time is it? And it's like, you think 5-10 minutes has gone by and it's already 9 or 10.
Oh yeah.
Right. Hours go by. I'm like that sometimes when I'm writing. Most of the time I have to just push it. But I mean, it does all those things. I mean, it helps with depression. It stimulates the mind, stimulates creativity, lowers stress, takes all that kind of stuff. And so.
And imagine that with like a child that's nonverbal or on the spectrum, autistic, isn't able to express, right? And I've worked with kids, I've done art therapy with children where I've had kids come into my classroom who were stressed out from the general education room that was putting all this pressure on them. And I'm like, you know what, you guys, we're just going to paint today. We're going to paint? Yeah, let's get the paints out. And just change that whole mindset for them, giving them, and they would say to me all the time, can we paint today? Can we paint? I said, let's get some stuff done. We'll see what we can do, but for me, it was just seeing what is the purpose of pushing and pressuring academics when the child's not present in their body? They're not feeling well. They're depressed, like you said, or they have a horrible outlook. It just changes all that. I know last night I have a little studio in my garage and don't know what came over me, but I had this paint. I have all these paintings on the wall. I'm like, everything needs splattering today. And I woke up this morning and going, what did I do to all those? And I went on, it was okay. It was okay. I had to fix it a little bit, but it was beautiful, and it just having that opportunity just to kind of let loose. But if you are a parent, let's continue with this writing piece and imagining stories. What if you have a child that can't write or can't talk? Do you think art is a way to get that out, or an other way? Movement. I heard you talk about, dancing, things like that. Yeah.
Let me share one of the best stories. One of my favorite stories. If I can find it, give me 2 seconds.
Sure.
But you were talking about so many things, and so many things were popping.
I know. You're doing that to me. You're doing that to me. I hear all these things. And I'm like, wait, I got that story for that.
This is one of my favorite stories. This says it all. But the thing that set me free when I was young was building blocks. I loved the building blocks, and we had this big a wooden box, and then in it was all these little different shapes and stuff. And I mean, I would create these skyscrapers.
Were they wooden? Were they like the light wood?
Actual wood, yeah, like
My
blocks.
son had those too. Yeah.
Yeah, loved
Yeah.
it. And then Legos was fun, and then some of the other stuff. But I loved the building blocks. And then fast forward 18, 19, I was 18 or 19 and started working for a major building company doing residential homes. And then eventually when I was in New England, started an architectural and building company that put me through school. And that came from the building blocks, and that's the truth. But I just want to share the story because I always forget about it. But if you're familiar with the woman by the name of Gillian Lynn,
Okay.
and she was a choreographer, and she did Cats in Phantom of the Opera. And when she was at school, she was really helpless, like most students today, that they would be defined that way because you've got 48-year-olds stuffed in a classroom for 40 hours a week. What do you think is going to happen?
Right.
And another thing too is all children learn differently. You know, I'm very hands-on. You could talk to me all day long and you're going to put me to sleep.
Right.
I need to do it and experience it. Some people are verbal. Some people are. Everyone's different. We all learn differently, and so you can't teach an entire group of students the exact same way and expect all of them to advance. But at school, they wrote to her parents and they said, "We think Jillian has a learning disorder." Right? That they love defining things. She couldn't concentrate, was fidgety in class. And so she went to a specialist. Her mom took her to a specialist. And thank God for this man who was brilliant. But they go into this oak paneled room and the mom's kind of there. And Jillian's sitting on a couch, and she's kind of, she's a bit fidgety, and he's talking to her a little bit. And he said, Jillian, he goes, stay here. I'm going to go talk to your mom for a couple of minutes and we'll come back. And before he left, he turned on the music. And so they walked out of the classroom and the mom's like, what's wrong with her? And he said, nothing's wrong with you. He goes, watch for a second. And within a couple of minutes, Jillian got onto her feet and she was dancing to the music. Yeah. And she goes, what's wrong with my daughter? He goes, nothing's wrong with your daughter. She's a dancer. Take her to a dance class. Yeah. And so being interviewed later, Jillian said, what happened? And she goes, my mom did. And she goes, it was amazing. She goes, I was around people that had to move to think. They had to move to think, and they did jazz and they did tap and they did modern, and she excelled at it and loved it. She eventually auditioned for the Royal Ballet. She became a soloist, had a wonderful career. She started the Gillian Lynn Dance Studio, taught thousands of children and adults dancing, became very successful, met Andrew Lloyd Webber, is responsible for some of the most successful musicals in history. She's a multimillionaire, and she's brought pleasure to millions of people, and someone else would have told her to sit down and put her on medication. Yeah. And that's the story of today.
I know that story.
Some kids are just dancers, Yeah.
I know that story well, Chad. As a special education teacher, I was pretty much done the day that I sat in an IEP, and one teacher wrote a review of a student labeling him ADHD. I turned to the parents and said, I believe he's gifted. This is after they were ghost white, traumatized from the report. And I said, well, I believe he's gifted. That night, the principal wrote me an email and pretty much threw me over the bridge. How dare you say he's gifted? Well, I see him for 3 hours a day. And this kid was gifted. I mean, his imagination, everything. And I got in trouble, literally, for telling the parents that because it wasn't in the eligibility report. And I'm like, well, you didn't ask me.
I know one or a couple of schools in Texas that every single child there is on medication. Isn't that awful? And that's a big business for them too, and a kickback to the teachers or dean or principal and stuff. And most kids, if any kids, shouldn't be on medication, to say the very least. But I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to sit here and prescribe. Although the medical field is a joke, and they're not learning organics or natural or any of that kind of stuff. And 90% of everything can be solved by that, nutrients, minerals, etc. But anyway, but go on.
About fresh air.
Yeah. And getting out and walking in the park and having some fun and playing frisbee football.
Your bare feet.
Yeah.
I saw a group of little homeschool girls the other day at the park with my dog. And it was cold. It was a cold, blizzardy day. I turned around and looked at them. They all took their shoes off and started running through the grass. And I'm like, that's awesome. It's a homeschool kid. And they were.
Yeah, right. I'll say this too, from all my studies and all my traveling and all the schools I've gone to, and I've been to all of them, private, public, Catholic, Christian. homeschool charter, but the homeschool kids are the most well-rounded, best educated kids I've ever met. They're grounded. They're good listeners. They ask good questions. They're articulate. They're well-read. They're usually 1 to 2 grades ahead of everyone else.
That's true.
So
I love that. And that's why I'm so proud of parents who choose to homeschool their children that are challenged in their learning, right? Maybe it could be language, it could be physical, it could be anything, but they realize, and they're realizing now, my child has gifts. I mean, when you're created in the image of God, there is genius in every person.
Absolutely.
I do not care how disabled you are. And I tell parents this all the time, and it's my job to help you see that and then get that out for your child. So let me move on.
Have you ever seen, real quick, and I can't remember his name, he was a gentleman that was born without arms and legs. You know what I'm talking about? And he's an evangelist.
Oh, no, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. And he was born like that, and came to Christ. And I got the privilege of seeing him at my church, and God's used him, and he's traveled the world bringing people.
That is amazing. I know, that's the thing I tell parents. When I first meet a parent, they come to me. My whole heart and passion is to find the gift that your child, what they were put on this earth to do, other than love God and know God. There's a purpose that God has for each one of us. So what is that person? What is that purpose? Is it to bring joy? Is it to be loving? Is it, like you, to be so creative, to change the trajectory of literature for a whole world? You're the current world. To me, you're like the modern day C.S. Lewis. You really are. So this is super exciting for me because I love C.S. Lewis so much. I'm like, why couldn't I meet C.S. Lewis?
Right. Yeah.
He would have been my best friend. I know it. And so I just feel like this is as close as I'm going to get. And on this side, right? So, well, let's go to another question if I can, unless we can just keep rambling. But let me ask you this. This is a good one. I bet you have information on. What's the connection, would you say, between storytelling and a child's self-confidence? And not just storytelling, but listening to stories. Let's add that in there too. But it's connected to their self-confidence or identity.
Yeah, that's a great question because I've done a great deal of research. I'm part of a PhD program, and so I did a massive independent study where I was interviewing quite a few of the alumni across the field, in every field that you can imagine. And guess what I found out were the 3 most important skill sets in the world. Number one was creativity.
I heard you say this, but go ahead.
Number 1 was creativity. Number 2 was storytelling.
Yes.
And number three within that study was communication, but storytelling. And I'm saying today, storytelling is one of the top 3 most important skills. And the thing is you're telling a story the rest of your life. Whether I'm writing an email to you as a follow-up, and the way I write that and how I articulate it, or whatever, it could be a simple sentence or it could be a paragraph, to your resume, to presenting in front of a classroom, to whatever field you're in. Whether you're starting a company, well, then what's your story? Yeah. Whether you're trying to sell a car, you know what I mean, at a car lot, you know what I mean? I mean, every storytelling is embedded in everything, and how well you tell a story is the difference between failure and success. Imagine going into an interview for a position, and you're against 100 to 200 to even 1,000 candidates. Those are the numbers today. And they're asking you, so tell me a little bit about yourself. Oh, well, I don't know, but it's just you've already lost it. That's a great question. Sure. Well, I'm originally from Newport Beach, California. I was back east in Wellesley, Massachusetts for 16 years, where I did my, you know what I mean? And you're smart and you're articulate, and you're saying just the things that they need to know. You're not going off at some tangent or saying, I'll never forget a ski trip that I took. Who cares? Yeah. But I'm just saying the difference between, that's how important storytelling is. And I come back to the kid that, what'd you do this summer? And it's how well the child can articulate what they did, whether you're going to bore the people that are listening to it, or you're giving a book report in front of the classroom. You're talking about confidence to them. And they're getting up there and saying, whatever you have, the 3 minutes or 5 minutes, and how good is that book report, and how well they can articulate that book report based on a 3-act structure. It's always based on the 3-act structure, beginning, a middle, and an end. And I did, I'll be honest, when I was younger, I was terrified. I'd take a D if it meant not having to get up in front of a classroom, until I took Toastmasters. And that was kind of my venue in there. And then eventually I got into theater And then I got into professional improv, situation comedy, like Whose Line Is It Anyway?
You've had a great life.
Yeah. But it's like, so it's like, it's taken a long time. And so I get it. They say next to was it death and public speaking are the two things people fear the most. But storytelling, you know what I mean? So it's threaded throughout, and it's like, that's something that can be taught at home. That's something you guys could learn with a bit of craftsmanship. I love the idea, because I was thinking about some of the questions you'd asked earlier, and it's like, read a great book with your kids, and like Britfield and Lost Crown, and you don't need to necessarily read it to them, although you can if they're too young, but have them read a chapter and you read a chapter, once a day, or whatever the timing allows, and then talk about it. What do you think of the chapter? And what you're getting to do is you're getting them to think about what they read, and they're articulating it. Well, I really liked the beginning, at the orphanage, and my favorite scene was this, and start to have a couple questions, a bit of framework, that it's not loose and all over the place. But little by little, you can start to articulate how they summarize, a chapter, or how they summarize, and, maybe just free flowing at first. And then it's just like, we'll time each other for like 3 minutes. Let's just have some and see if we can get it all, whatever. You have framework, but you're getting them to think about what they read.
With it.
Yeah. You're getting to articulate it and tell a story, because that's what they're telling. It's a story. Yeah. And, but I love that interaction. I know some parents that are reading the book to their children because they're too young, and they love it. I know some that will listen to the audio version while they're driving on a trip, and the kids will actually, after 6 hours, get somewhere, and they're like, hold on, we got to wait to see what happens. It's like, instead of kids like darting out of the car.
Don't get out of the car. That's how I've been listening to it online, and my data ran out of my Spotify. I'm very unhappy. I have 4 chapters to go. And it's you hang on, you've got to know, are they going to make it? Are they going to find, what they're looking? I mean, it's just so amazing. Like, your imagination is crazy. So you with the kids, right? Writing the story.
It's fun. I think you asked two questions. Yeah. You asked about, how much of am I in the book series, and I am, but I don't think there's any particular one character. Tom would be the typical. Yeah, Tom would be the typical character, and he's got a good heart and courage, and he tries, and there's those aspects. I love Sarah. She's actually one of my favorite characters. Yes. She's well educated, but speaks her mind. She's Scottish. She's got a bit of a fiery temper. Right. Which probably came out in the book, and I love that, and it's just like, she's put up with things, and I just love that. And I do too. Detective Gowerstone, very articulate. He's kind of based on James Bond and Sherlock Holmes. He's always thinking ahead. Those are the characters that influenced me.
Oh, neat.
And I think Professor Hainsworth almost has a C.S. Lewis feel to him.
Yes.
It's this kind of well-educated, stuffy kind of.
You put C.S. Lewis in your books.
And he was in there. I think he was referenced, wasn't he? I think he's referenced.
Yes.
In the book.
When the kids were getting the books with Lewis or something.
One of my favorite lines from Patrick is like, "And no more Shakespeare."
Yeah, I love that. I love that too. Yeah, I'm trying to. I can't say my favorite. I had shared with you earlier, just personally, my mother was put in an orphanage when she was around 12. And so that piece of her life, of her story, did impact eventually my story. But I just always had this like heartache for her life. Her father died. And then her mother went off to become an opera singer, because she was a singer. Nice. And then the girls were put in an orphanage, in a Catholic orphanage. But it was not fun, and it was not friendly. It was very traumatizing. And so I think you really nailed it when you described the orphanage, and just the kids coming together in the family piece, and even celebrating when they had to stay behind, and the two, I don't want to tell the whole story, but it was amazing.
I love that. They were all willing to step up and get in trouble and get punished if they could help Tom and Sarah escape, because every day they were out there was a silent victory for all of them. And I just love that. Yeah.
And also, if you think about it, it was like a story for them. Like, for them to imagine and dream what was happening to them, and hope, a story of hope. Maybe they would get rescued. I don't know if that happens, but
you'll see. It's a beautiful ending.
I can't wait. One of the things when I homeschooled many years ago, I did a classical education, and this reminds me very much of a book that should be used in the classical education of training, with all the history and everything. That's what classical education does. But I was also thinking, for those kids that can't necessarily tell back a story or share their thoughts. Just having them act it out, even with a puppet
Oh, I
or
love that. Oh, yeah,
picture,
yeah.
like
Sure.
drawing pictures as they're listening. That's what I did with my children
Love
because we did classical. So we would listen to Jim Wise online telling
it.
stories or acting out history, and they would draw pictures. And just as a way of checking for information or comprehension. So I was thinking about that with this. Wouldn't that be fun to start collecting kids' art around that?
Oh, sure. Like picture, but I'm thinking like Pictionary, you know what I mean? Or what's that game where the adults play it and stuff, and it's
Yeah.
like you have to act out and stuff, and it's like,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
I mean, like, why not do that with your young kids? You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Right.
what if you do it once every 3 weeks? You know what I mean? Like board games, you could play a fun board game with them, but and break it up with some great activities. But what if like every 3 weeks you guys did a Pictionary type of thing, and you just write it down, and and maybe it's movies or something or whatever they've seen or whatever they know, and they got to act it out. What you're getting them good at is acting. You're getting them good at
I love
sitting in
that.
front of an audience.
Yeah.
You're getting them good at movement and expression. And so I'm just throwing that out and stuff. And you're the expert in this field.
Well,
But
I have imagination, high imagination, and I'm like, what if you danced it out? Like you said there was a musical. There was a musical. What if there was a ballet around it?
Sure.
Around this
Oh, that would
story?
be cool. Britfield the ballet.
That'd be so cool.
We've got the theater production, which you might be aware of. Yeah,
Right.
I spent 18 months taking the 384 pages, putting it into a 90-minute 2-act play specifically for elementary and middle schools.
I love that.
28 sound effects, 54 digital slides, acting and speaking roles for over 30 student actors. And
So
they're
that's
involved.
something like a school could purchase and they could
Oh, yeah. Well,
do in
yeah,
their school.
we piloted it a couple of years ago for 4 nights to great success. And since then, we're now selling it through the website, and
Okay.
we'll eventually roll it out to all this kind of to all the major databases and stuff. But yeah, so schools we sold one this week actually to a place, a school in Tennessee, and it's all turnkey. Pay for it and download it, and boom, it's all set. So
okay, now I know the next thing I'm going to be selling on my website. I have a question for you too, like as in terms of your institute. I know you have a download there that I thought was very fascinating for ideas. Sure. Can you talk about that a little bit for families? Because it's a free download. It's for schools per se, but it really works fine. I was reading through it and I thought I uploaded it to my computer or downloaded it. I guess, I don't know, whichever way it went there. And it was just such great resources. I know I would love to be able to pull that up right now, but I don't.
Oh, it's okay. I've got it in front of me.
Okay, good.
You've got the idea of that's stuck in my mind now is of a ballet, the Britfield Ballet. Wouldn't that be
good.
Beautiful? That'd be beautiful. Yeah. So if you go to BritfieldInstitute.org and you go to resources, we have some wonderful stuff. We have some, it's free. It's giveaway, and we spend a lot of time and money putting it together. The first thing I think is fun, especially for classrooms, is printable creativity quotes, and I think there's over 50 of them. And the idea is, they're just these great fun quotes with a great background, and it says, the problem isn't that we aim too high and fail, we aim too low and succeed. Mm-hmm. Or the true sign of intelligence is not knowledge but imagination. And Albert Einstein. The best way to predict the future is to create it, Peter Drucker. And you could just immediately just print one of these and put it up in the classroom and put up a new one every
pictures too. Yeah, they're
beautiful. They're beautiful pictures. It's a great quote. And so that's kind of something simple. And then we have 31 ideas to make any classroom creative. So it's kind of in an ebook form. You could download it. Boom, you're good to go. We've got.
Do you think if you created something like that for homeschoolers, it would be similar?
Oh, it's all the same. Yeah.
Oh, it's all the same. I think so too.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we have the first chapter 1 and 2 free for download ebook. We have the first chapter 1 and 2 audiobook. We have the creativity gap, which is kind of restoring creativity to schools and the industry, which is kind of a white paper written on it with a lot of stats and statistics, some of what I've already gone over. We have Britfield and the Lost Crown 8-week study guide, because the book is meant to be taught in the classroom or at home in homeschool groups. and that's
Wow.
free. That's a $30 value. You know, we sell it.
Wow.
We sell it on our website for $30. We're just giving it to you. It's
Wow.
83 pages, based on. We used the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Lewis's, as a model, and his was only 50 pages. Britfield Lost Ground Study Guide, and then we have 11 creativity games for the classroom, and then we have the Britfield book club kit. So if you wanted to create a Britfield book club, so those are just some things that are on the website, free. You can download them, and you're good to go. That should keep you busy for a while,
amazing.
at least
Yeah.
a semester.
Exactly. That's amazing. That's a gift. Thank you so much for giving that to everyone. Yeah, I definitely want to encourage people to check that out and see if that would be helpful. It will be helpful. I looked at it. It's amazing. How are we doing on time? You and I think we could talk all day. They're going to have to probably edit
We had a
this
late
one.
start, though. I think we got maybe 5 minutes if you're going for an hour.
Say that again.
Actually, I can look at the recording. It's only 51 minutes. So
Yeah.
depending on, okay, great.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then also I wanted to ask you, how can families incorporate storytelling into everyday life without needing to create a full curriculum?
I think having dinner around the dinner table needs to come back.
Mhm.
I think devices need to be monitored, and never at the dinner table or during your time as a family. They've got the rest of the day if you're allowing them to use them. But I say that because it's like around the dinner table, and that interaction of how was your day needs to come back. It's a very simple thing. You know, how was school today? What did you learn? What was your favorite thing you did today? Or Dad, what's going on at work, or whatever it is. It's that interaction, because guess what? You're telling stories. And
that's true.
there's very few good series on television, but one that I enjoyed is more for adults, but was Blue Bloods with Tom Selleck. And they went on for 14 seasons. Wow.
Oh.
And it really is a great, they're all cops. Tom Selleck is the commissioner. His oldest son, Danny, is a detective. Young one, Jamie, is a kind of a new recruit. And then Erin, the daughter, works for the district attorney. And so it's like, and yet there's this really great family bond. It's interesting because there's always something happening, and they do it in fours. So it might start out with something the commissioner's dealing with, and then ends on a hanger, and then Danny, and he's trying to chase this one, but every Sunday they get together as a family, no matter what, and they come to the dinner table, and that's when they have their family, and they eat and they share, and so when you were saying, like, and that really stuck with me, and I'm like, when's the last time that happened? And it's pretty cool. And so, but those are some simple things to do. It's, again, there's a great quote by the German philosopher Goethe, and he says, if I treat you as you are, I make you worse. But if I treat you as what I think you are capable of becoming, I help you become it. You're right.
I love that.
Yeah. And you see what the idea is. I never see people as they are. I see what they can be. Not that I don't accept them for what they are. I'm just saying I can see things that they don't see inside them. I can see the greatness that can come out. And I say that with kids. And I think a couple things why the tour was so successful is I wasn't talking down to 12-year-olds. I was talking with 12-year-olds.
Yes.
My book doesn't dumb down. It pulls up with vocabulary and sentence structure.
Right.
I just don't waste a lot of time talking about things I don't need to talk. And most novels do that today. They got about 100 pages of story and 200 pages of description. And halfway into it, they're spending 2 or 3 paragraphs describing what the woodwork looks like on the house. Who cares?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, that's not story. And it bores the kids, and they'll hit those speed bumps, so they'll just stop reading. The greatest compliment I get from kids is that they've read it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I've had kids that have read the 384 pages in one sitting. The record to date is something like 2 hours and 47 minutes that a child read this entire. I couldn't read this book in 3 hours. I just don't read that fast, But the point is that it's compelling. It's based on the 3-act structure. I have a script writing background. And so that's why 90% of the people that read it say it reads like a movie. And what some of the comments that I love is that I feel like I'm one of the characters, or I feel like I'm in it.
Yes.
And I love that. Yeah.
I definitely can relate to that as well. I love that. I would not expect you to answer that about just going back to the table, back to the time of sharing.
Back to basics, really.
basics.
we've not grown out of that. It's been
Yeah.
forced out of us, right?
Yeah.
But go back to the basics. So
Yeah. And I was thinking, I'm on a business meetup group, and she was talking yesterday about, keeping the Sabbath, essentially, like preparing for the Sabbath, like that will start, say, Saturday night, and then, through Sunday, where you're off the phone, you're having conversation, you're having a beautiful long meal. It's kind of hard to do with a black lab, but we can do it. We can do it. We can turn the TV off. We can turn the computers off. And I wanted to ask you, just for a fun question, what do you do in your spare time when you're not working, when you're not writing books? What like, how do you, I know, you're not really into TV and all that, but what do you do for your spare time?
No, and I do. I love decompressing with good TV, if you will. I mean, the stuff I'm watching is from 10 or 20 years ago. I kid you not.
Right.
There's very little of anything that's current. But I like getting into a good series. I'm enjoying the Castle, if you're familiar with that. And
no, I read it down because I'm always looking for
8 seasons, and it's really good. He's a writer. He's like this best-selling fictional writer. So again, I'm connecting. He's in New York.
Cool.
And he's hired. He's eventually kind of hired on by the New York Department of the police department to help with the case. And there's a woman called Beckett. She's stunning, but she's very smart. And she's reluctant at first. It's like, what the heck, like this author. But I like it because it's a fun show. It's very well written. And as a writer, I'm watching how they set up every single episode and who did it at the end, and it's never who you think it is. And so, I like those that kind of challenge me intellectually, but it's entertaining.
Right.
And so things like that are fun and good for me. It's hard with films because there's very few good ones. When's the last time you've been to a movie?
Right. Right. I did see the Dylan movie.
The what?
The Bob Dylan movie.
Oh, how was it?
I thought it was great, but I grew up with Bob Dylan and all those guys. So it was, to me, and I'm from Philadelphia. I'm from back east girl. So it was just reminiscent of those times and that music.
That's pretty cool. Sure. I'll take you back.
And it was clean. It was clean. I'm just
I like reading. I'm back into British literature again, which is funny. I'm kind of reading like the top. I've read most of the top 100 books one needs to read and stuff, but I'm actually reading Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities again.
Good.
And so that's fun. And
what's your favorite book? What's your favorite?
Great Expectations is my favorite book by Dickens.
Okay.
Yeah.
George MacDonald. Do you have any George MacDonald? Have you read George MacDonald?
I'm familiar with him, but it's not resonating with me.
He was. I think him and C.S. Lewis were kind of friends.
Yeah, I think Lewis was influenced by him.
Yeah, and maybe he was before him, but maybe he was before him. But he wrote a lot of children's stories.
Yeah, fantasy.
So I have some of his books actually. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
No, and it depends. I don't necessarily have a favorite. I mean, I loved I love Roald Dahl's books. I love Charlie and Chocolate Factory.
Yes.
And that actually was a masterpiece. I as a funny note, in the last 18 months, I went back and started reading all this literature again, just for fun. I read all 3 The Mouse and the Motorcycle books. Haven't read it for 50 years, right? And I enjoyed it. I read 35 or 40 of the 78 Hardy Boys books. And every night I would just kind of come back to it just for fun. And just why not? And plus I kind of wanted to see what was going on with it. And then I read all the Sherlock Holmes about 2 or 3 times, which is always fun and very interesting. And then I'm into biographies. So I read all about C.S. Lewis, which is amazing. We could talk about him for hours. I read about Roald Dahl biography, about a 600-page biography. That was amazing. Like his background, his story, his influence.
Really?
He's actually his books like James and the Giant Peach and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory were rejected by a lot of British publishers. He eventually he first got it published in America out of New York, and then eventually Britain. They didn't want it, which is interesting. Totally rejected, and the libraries didn't want it. And yet he sold over 120 million books. And a couple of years ago, Netflix bought the entire estate for $680 million.
Wow.
But I think that was a masterpiece. The rest were fun and different, but love Charles Dickens. Fascinating story. My favorite of his is Great Expectations. I just love that one. It's kind of a
That is
classic.
so cool.
Love Jane Austen. Pride and Prejudice is probably my favorite of her. She's fascinating. The Bronte sisters up in Yorkshire. I've been up to their house and
Wow.
and seen where they've written. I've been to Jane Austen's house too in
That is
Hampshire.
so cool.
Yeah, and
Do you like to go to old bookstores?
oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I can see you in there. Just looking for those old classics. I was doing that the other day. I was looking for Little Women. And
Been to Louise May Alcott's house there in Concord, Massachusetts.
no
It's
way.
still there, and you go visit it, and it's and you can walk up to the third story attic, and there's the desk where she wrote, where she spent, I think it was 8 weeks writing Little Women.
No way.
Whereas I think Tolkien took about 17 years on Lord of the Rings.
Wow.
To give you a different spectrum and stuff. But and again,
so many great
you know,
stories.
based, and you can go. There's a graveyard there, and that's where they're all buried. And but
That's
the house
amazing.
is cool, and, you go, and I love that. Emerson's house is there, and then
I love Emerson.
Walden,
I would love to go there.
Walden Pond, where Thoreau wrote, Walden, and you can walk around Walden Pond, and again, I mean, Concord is amazing. I was about 20 minutes from it, and we're coming up to this historical time, with the revolution and everything. The old bridge is still there. I mean, it's been replaced, but the actual bridge where the shots were fired that rang around the world. Technically, that happened in Lexington, but the first time that a British was shot and killed happened there at Concord, in the Concord Bridge, and you can actually see some little gravestones there. And there's a house across the street, I think, where one of the bullets was lodged into the wall. But I mean, it's like dripping with history. You know what I mean? Like, you can spend a day in Concord, and it's not a big place, but I mean, it's just amazing. There's like the Concord Inn or something, and it was founded in 1760 or something, and still running as a hotel. And there's a Concord bookstore, which is cool. So
that's what I miss about living in Philadelphia and back east. There was so much history everywhere, and we grew up with that. For our field trips, we'd go to Washington, D.C., and I remember as a little girl touching the Liberty Bell. You can't touch it anymore, but I touched it, and I still thought that was cool. Amazing, anyway. Well, gosh, I don't know if we got to all of our questions today, but I had fun talking with you. And do you have anything else you want to add? I think just you in general and your heart for learning and inspiration comes out in so many ways. Like, we're talking about music, dance, artists, writers, travel, art, just in exposing your child to all these amazing, beautiful things. Yes. Thank you for sharing it in that way. And I think every homeschooler, like I said before, expose your child to as much as you can, right? Not just these little games on the phone.
That's the one thing that's resonating as in closing is number one, spend as much time with them, but in spending that time, do something different and fun every week if you can. And again, it doesn't cost you anything. Maybe once a week you go to the library and you're there for an hour and pick out 3 books. I would think a parent could do a theme every month, and we're doing British theme, and we're going to read one book from a British author. We're going to get we're going to look online, you know what I mean, and go on a map and look at it all. We're going to watch maybe a British film or a great documentary. I mean, travel documentary, which are great. I still do that. I still watch them.
That's great. Yeah.
Like
the cooking classes.
And whatever you would like threw in a British meal. Yeah. And again, it's like once a month, and then next month is France, and then the next month is Italy. And I mean, oh my gosh, the impact that's going to have on that kid. And they're going to tell you at 10 or 11, but they'll remember it at 22 or 25. And who knows, they might become a world traveler. They might write travel books. Who knows what's going to happen. That was just as an example. That's just a library thing. And don't think the library is going out of style. Don't think the print book is going out of style. In fact, the print market is growing at anywhere from 8 to 12% right now. And independent bookstores are now growing at 5 to 7%. Board games is growing at 5 to 7% every year. It's a $2 billion industry. It's not going down. It's going.
And you're going to do a board game, right?
We are. We're working on it. Yep.
Hey, I know. That's so cool. I can't believe it. When is that movie coming out?
Yeah, I'm hoping November 2026. It'll probably be November 2027, which is okay.
Yeah. That is so exciting. I mean, you must be just delirious with joy and just everything.
Excited. Yeah, I'm feeling it. It's pretty cool. It's hard because I'm now writing book 5. And so it's like, you know what I mean? Like full focus. For 4 months, I had the freedom and beauty of doing whatever. And I'm busy and I'm doing interviews and we're running the company and, I mean, all the other stuff that goes on it. But it's like when you're back into the game of writing, all you care about is writing. And I say to myself every morning when I have to do something else, I'd rather be writing.
I love writing too. I'm the same way.
I'd rather be writing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm writing a story about it's called, I don't know what it's called. I forgot what it's called. It's about three generations. It's about a mother, a daughter, and her mother, and how they're all intertwined. I don't know. I don't know why I started that, but I thought it was interesting. Chad, thank you so much. Thank you for this. You're welcome. It's amazing. I can't wait to finish the first book and then get into the rest of them. And I have no one to read them to. Sophie, my dog, she may like them. Actually, she wouldn't mind probably.
I'll say this real quick in closing, because as I'm writing, I'm doing my research all the time. And it starts, book 5 starts in Siberia, and then heads through Mongolia and into China. And so, what do I know about Mongolia? So I'm doing research, and then I'm like, what if they bump into they're being chased and they bump into nomads of a tribe. And so then I'm like looking it up, and I'm like, well, what would they sleep in? And then I'm getting that description. I'm like, what would they eat? You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, what if they were all around a big campfire at night sharing these stories? And, and it's just, I mean, I have so much fun with this. And then I'm like, they eventually get to an airport and it's like, they can't get on a flight. So I got to sneak onto a cargo plane. I'm like, well, if they're in the back, is it pressurized? And how cold does it get at 40,000 feet? I mean, this is the kind of stuff I'm doing all the time. This morning, I was looking at my map. You know what I mean? I'm like, actually, they're in Beijing, and I'm like, okay, so if the train or from the airport stops here, where would they first go, and what are the sites, and where do they stay that night? And you know what I mean? So I say that
you're going to be going there soon, I think.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Actually, we have a major publisher in China that's interested in the book series. We picked that up at the London Book Fair in March. So we'll see.
Can I ask you one question? I was wondering, will you ever bring in animals? Because I love it.
I'm bringing it in 5. I've heard that before, you know what I mean? And because again, too, from a merchandise standpoint, let's be honest, like having a really cool golden retriever, the Britfield golden, and it never fits.
It's a lab. It's a black lab. I have a black lab. Because I just went to England.
But and I've tried in a sense, because it's kind of cool and stuff, but it never worked and it never fit. I do bring in horses in there's an awesome horse scene, one of my favorite scenes in book 2.
Okay, good.
And I got a great love of horses. I bring horses back again in book 3, and I'm now bringing them back in book 5. But as they're traveling now through Mongolia in the forest because they're being chased, I get to bring in a plethora of animals, and I can't wait. I've already got a list of them. And then there's going to be a scene where it's like the nomads are there on horses, and they have camels that are grabbing their stuff. And so all the kids have to get on camels. And so I was researching camels, and I'm like, I didn't realize camels can go up to 35 miles an hour. Like, they're pretty freaking fast. You don't see camels like being that fast, right? You kind of see them like, so no, this is fun because it fits the narrative, and I can bring in animals. It just doesn't fit when you're in London. You know what I mean? Right. It's just doesn't work. It's a vicious dog, obviously, in book 1, Wind, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's true. There was that vicious dog.
You can see what he looks like. I've always had the Hound of the Baskervilles in my mind from Sherlock Holmes as Wind, like this, just like black, ferocious, like almost like demon-like red eyes. So.
That was good. That was so good. I'm telling you, I'm going to have to listen to the whole thing again. I just enjoyed it so much. It was very delightful. Well, thank you again. I hope that we have you back again. I'm sure we'll think of another topic someday if you have time for us. But thank you. And thank you from our homeschool families. I'm sure
you're welcome.
Appreciated this. Okay, so hold on there. Don't go anywhere. I have to read something. Oh yeah, I always forget this part. Just a huge thank you to you, Chad, Mr. Stewart, for joining us today and sharing your heart for inspiring this generation, the next generation of thinkers, storytellers, and innovators. If you're curious about the Britfield series or want to bring one of his virtual authors of you have virtual authors. No, you are the virtual author. To visit your homeschool group, head over to britfield.com. Is that the best place for people to reach out to you, would you say?
It is, yeah, britfield.com, and our play is on there, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
Our virtual author visit is on there. It shows like
Okay.
just scenes from all the different schools and feedback
Yeah.
from teachers, and
Okay.
then you can buy, if you buy books through the Britfield through the Britfield website. I'm still signing them, and so it's the only place you're going to get signed books. Obviously, you can go on Amazon or any of the other platforms, but
Right.
great place to get signed books.
That's a good to know. Well, thank you, everyone. Please check out Homeschool Heroes at spedhomeschool.com for more episodes of just how to make your homeschool journey supported and building a community and a family, really, right? So that's what this was about today. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you next time. There we go. In a second. I'm not doing too good on this today. They're going to have to edit this, Chad. It's not.
No problem.
It's, yeah, we actually fortunately have people to do that.